Have you ever waited years for someone who might never choose you? In a quiet mountain town, a young cowboy falls in love, but with someone he can't have. Not yet. He makes a promise that could either define him as honorable or destroy everything he's built. And when the time finally comes, will she choose him or walk away forever? This story reminds us, true love isn't about taking. It's about waiting until the other person is free to choose. This channel tells stories of the Wild West, cowboy life, love across hardships. If you believe in love worth waiting for, don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe.
The dust from the stagecoach had not yet kissed the ground when William Will Carter first saw her on the boardwalk beside her father, and his world shifted right then and there. She could not have been older than 14, all lanky arms and legs with wild, dark hair spilling from her bonnet, but her eyes held a wisdom that made a man look twice. Her father, Edmund Whitmore, was the new silver expert in Telluride, Colorado, sent to size up the claims that made men wealthy or desperate. It was the spring of 1881, and the mountains still wore their caps of snow, even as the valley below struggled into green. William was 22, a man who had gone from ranch hand to businessman when his father passed, leaving him a freight company that was barely hanging on. He was in town delivering goods when he found himself rooted to the spot, just watching this young woman laugh at something her father said, the sweet sound drifting across the muddy street like a distant bell. "That's Edmund Whitmore's daughter," grumbled Marcus, an old-timer practically rooted to the bench by the general store. "Elizabeth, a pretty thing, but you keep your eyes forward, son. She's just a girl." William felt his face burn. I didn't mean anything." Marcus chuckled, a noise like stones in a bucket. "I'm sure, but I've seen that look before. Let me give you some advice, boy. Even dreaming about a girl that young will get you run out of this town. Whitmore's a protective man, and rightly so." William nodded, lifted his last crate, and forced himself to forget how the sunlight made her hair shine like black silk. He had freight to haul and a business to rescue. No time for silly thoughts about a girl who was still a child. Telluride was not a big town, even with the silver boom bringing in crowds of hopeful men. The main street was maybe a half-mile long, lined with buildings that put on a fancy front to hide what was behind them. The mountains surrounded them all, gorgeous and deadly, and the crisp air made everything seem closer than it truly was. William saw Lizzie Whitmore often in the months that followed, always from afar, and always with her father or the severe-looking woman who was her governess. He watched her change that first year, not in a wrong way, but like a man watches the seasons turn. She grew out of her awkwardness. She started pinning her hair up, though a few curls always managed to escape and frame her face. She began to walk through town with a new purpose, not holding her father's arm, but matching his stride, as if she owned her place in the world. William never spoke a word to her. He barely let himself think on her. But something had taken root in his heart the day he first saw her, and it would not be moved, no matter how much he focused on his work. The freight business got better bit by bit. William brought on 2 more men to help with the runs to the mining camps. He invested in better wagons and stronger horse teams. He saved every dollar he made, sleeping in a little room over his office instead of getting a real house. His mother had passed years before, and his father's death left him with nobody but a sister in Kansas he hadn't seen in 5 years. Telluride was his home now, and he was determined to build a life there. In the summer of 1882, when Elizabeth turned 15, her father shipped her off to a boarding school down in Denver. William heard the news from the town gossips who knew every little thing. "Edmund feels she needs a proper lady's education," said Mrs. Henderson from the boarding house. "He thinks Telluride is too rough for her." William told himself it was all for the better. Out of sight, out of mind. He poured himself into his work, stretching his roots and even starting a passenger service for folks needing safe travel through the mountains. He courted a widow named Sarah for a time, a decent woman who made fine pies but never had much to say. They parted ways on good terms, both knowing they were just acting out a part they thought they should play. Elizabeth came home for Christmas that year, and William was delivering a package to the Whitmore house right as she pulled up. She stepped out of the carriage in a deep green traveling dress that made her seem older, more refined. She was taller, with the beginnings of a womanly shape. But what hit William the hardest was the pure, simple joy on her face when she saw her father waiting. Edmund Whitmore saw William staring, and his face hardened into a scowl. "Carter, I think you have other deliveries to make." "Yes, sir. On my way, sir." William tipped the brim of his hat and turned his wagon around. But not before Elizabeth's gaze met his. Their eyes locked for just a second, and he saw only a flicker of curiosity. She had no clue who he was. She would not remember the freight man who brought packages to her door. He was just scenery to her, no more important than the mountains themselves. The winter of 1882 was a fierce one. The snows came down so heavy they closed the mountain passes for weeks. William lost 2 wagons and almost a driver when an avalanche crashed down the slope on what should have been an easy trip. The man survived only because of his quick wits and a fast horse. William spent the frozen season fixing his equipment and making plans for the spring, trying not to admit that Elizabeth Lizzie Whitmore was back in town, so near and yet completely out of reach. She went back to Denver in January, and Telluride felt a little bit emptier to William, though he would never say it out loud. And so the years went. Elizabeth would come home for the holidays and summers, stay a while, and then leave again. From a distance, William watched her grow from a girl into a beautiful young woman. He was always careful not to look too long, never giving anyone a reason to talk. But in a small town, people see everything. And by the time Elizabeth turned 16 in the spring of 1883, William knew folks were whispering when he walked into the saloon. Finally, Marcus pulled him aside outside the freight office one June afternoon. "You need to watch yourself, son." "I don't know what you're talking about." "The hell you don't. Everyone's seen how you look at that Whitmore girl. Her father's seen it, and he's not happy." William felt the heat climb his neck. "I've never said a word to her. I've never even gotten close to her. I've done nothing wrong. Looking at a girl that young with that kind of hunger in your eyes is wrong enough." Marcus's voice was soft, but his words hit like fists. "She's a child, William. You best get her out of your head before you ruin both your lives." "I know how old she is," William said, his voice strained. "I'm not some kind of monster. I haven't laid a hand on her. I've never even spoken to her. But you want to. It's written all over you every time she's around." Marcus let out a long sigh. "Look, I like you, boy. You've worked your tail off and made something good here. Don't you throw it all away for a girl who won't be old enough to choose for herself for years. Find a grown woman your own age and just forget about Elizabeth Lizzie Whitmore." William wanted to fight back, to say it was not like that. But he had no defense. Marcus was right. He was 24 years old, and he was stuck on a 16-year-old girl who did not even know his name. It was wrong. It felt shameful. And still he could not stop the way his own heart jumped every time he saw her walking on the street with her dark hair catching the sun and her laugh carrying on the breeze. That night, William got drunk. One of the few times he ever did. He sat in the saloon, slowly emptying a bottle of whiskey as the piano man played happy songs that grated on his soul. He thought about just leaving Telluride, starting fresh somewhere new where he would not have to see Elizabeth Lizzie Whitmore and be reminded of his own foolish heart. But running felt like quitting, and William had never been a quitter. His freight company was finally doing well. He had built something real, something that mattered. He could not just abandon it over feelings he should not have for a girl who was too young. So he made himself a solemn promise. He would wait. He would grow his business and build his life. He would not go near Elizabeth, would not talk to her, and would not give her father or anyone else a reason to doubt his character. A person. And when she was a woman grown, old enough to make her own way if she was still unspoken for, and if there was a whisper of a chance she might see him as more than a face in Telluride, he would finally introduce himself. He would come calling on her proper like. He would let her choose. Until that day, he would wait. That decision settled his mind some. He quit plaguing himself with stolen looks of her. When Elizabeth was in town, he made a point to handle his affairs clear on the other side of Telluride. He put his head down and worked on his freight company, pushing his routes to faraway mining camps, building a name for being dependable that made his business the most trusted in those parts. In 1884, William hit 25 and bought a house on the edge of town, a simple two-story place with a porch that looked out on the mountains, which helped on the nights when the loneliness crept in. He filled it with plain but sturdy furniture, thinking of a future that might just hold a family, though he could never quite put a face to anyone sharing that home with him. That summer, with Elizabeth at 17, Edmund Whitmore hired William's company to fetch Elizabeth from the Denver stagecoach stop and bring her back to Telluride. The regular driver was down with a fever, and William took the job himself. He could use the coin, and some piece of him wanted to know if he could keep his cool being that close to her after years of keeping his distance. She was waiting at the relay station when he pulled up, standing in the shade by a pile of bags that said she was home for a good long while. She had on a traveling dress the color of fresh cream, and a hat that nearly tamed all that hair of hers. And when she looked up as he approached, William felt that same old jolt from 3 years back. "Miss Whitmore, my name is William Will Carter from Carter Freight. I will be seeing you home to Telluride." She looked him over with a plain curiosity, and he saw she was trying to place him. "Have we met? I have dropped off freight at your father's house a time or two. We were never properly introduced, though." "Oh." She smiled, and it lit up her whole face. "Well, it is a pleasure to finally meet you for real, Mr. Carter. I am Elizabeth." "I know." He cleared his throat. "Mind if I get these bags loaded up?" The ride from the relay station to Telluride was 4 hours if the roads were good. William kept his eyes on his team, on the mountain passes that demanded a man's full attention to keep from tumbling, but he felt every bit of her presence on the wagon seat beside him. Her shoulder would bump against his whenever they hit a rut. She was not one for sitting in silence. "How long have you been running the freight company?" 3 years by myself. I worked for my daddy before that." "Do you enjoy it?" "The work, I mean." He shot her a look, surprised by the question. Most folks never bothered to ask if he liked his work. "Yes, ma'am. It is hard and sometimes risky, but I like being my own boss. I like building a thing that will last. That must be very satisfying." She gazed out at the mountains, and a touch of sadness crossed her face. "I am supposed to finish at the academy next spring. My father wants me to stay on in Denver after, to find a husband from one of the society families there. But that is not what you want. I do not rightly know what I want." She said it low, like she was telling a secret. "Is that an awful thing? I am 17 years old, and everyone keeps telling me I ought to know my own mind. But I feel like I'm just playing a part, pretending to be a grown woman without knowing what that really means." William wanted to tell her he knew the feeling, that even at 25 he sometimes felt like he was just winging it day by day. But he held his tongue, knowing that too much kindness, too much understanding, could smudge the lines he had drawn so carefully. "You have got time to sort that out," he said instead. "Do I?" "My father has already heard from 3 gentlemen in Denver asking for his permission to court me. 3 men I have never laid eyes on who want to marry me because my father has done well and I am easy on the eyes and know how to pour a cup of tea." "You are a whole lot more than just easy on the eyes," William said, before he could bite his tongue. Then he kicked himself inwardly. "Forgive me." That was out of line. Was it true? He stared hard at the road ahead. "Yes." She let out a laugh, a sound that was more surprise than anything. "Well, thank you for being honest, Mr. Carter. Most men just say what they reckon I want to hear." They rode without talking for a spell. Then Elizabeth asked, "How old are you?" 25. "Are you married?" "No, ma'am." "Why not?" He should have sidestepped it, should have mumbled something about not having found the right woman. But instead he heard himself say, Because the only woman I would want is one I can never have. She turned to look at him then, her dark eyes trying to read his face. He kept his own gaze locked on the road, but he could feel her stare. That sounds like a lonely life. It is what it is. My governess used to tell me that people build their own cages, sometimes. That we tell ourselves we cannot have something when the truth is we are just too scared to reach for it. Your governess sounds like a smart woman. She was. She passed on last winter. Pneumonia. Elizabeth's voice went soft. I miss her terribly. She was the only one who ever spoke to me like I had a lick of sense in my head. I am truly sorry for your loss. And William meant it. He could hear the real hurt in her voice. Thank you. She was quiet for a second. Mr. Carter, why did you really take this job? My father mentioned your usual driver was available. He said you decided to come yourself. William felt his hands clench the reins. Of course, Edmund Whitmore would put him to the test, see if he could be trusted alone with his only daughter. I needed the money. Business has been slow this month. It was a lie. And the way Elizabeth cocked her head, he knew she saw right through it. But she did not press him. Instead, she said, well, I am mighty glad you did. Glad you buy. This is the most honest talk I have had in months. They spent the rest of the trip talking about simple things, like the new buildings shooting up in Telluride, the silver strikes that kept the town humming, and how the mountains changed their faces with the seasons. William was careful to keep things proper, to keep a respectable distance between a man of 25 and a girl of 17. But something changed in those 4 hours. Elizabeth stopped being some perfect dream he could not touch, and became a real person, who was smart and complicated and unsure of her path. When they finally pulled up to the Whitmore house, Edmund was waiting on the porch. He looked mad enough to spit nails. Father? Elizabeth hopped down from the wagon like someone who was used to things that were not exactly prim and proper. Mr. Carter was a true gentleman. We had a nice chat about mountains and silver. Edmund's hard stare shifted from his daughter to William and back. Get in the house, Elizabeth. I will handle your luggage, but inside, now. Elizabeth gave William a look that said she was sorry, and then she vanished into the house. Edmund waited for the door to shut firm behind her before he turned to William, ice-cold anger in his eyes. I know your kind, Carter. I have seen you watching my girl for 3 long years. I hired your company today to see if I was right, and the look on your face tells me everything I need to know. William climbed down from the wagon, taking his time. Mr. Whitmore, I have never been anything but proper with your daughter. I have never laid a hand on her or said a word that was not completely respectful. You want her. Do not take me for a fool and deny it. She is 17 years old. William met the older man's gaze without flinching. I am aware of that, sir. I am also aware of how wrong it would be for me to pursue her. I have no plan to approach her until she is of an age to choose for herself. She will never choose you. Edmund said it with the certainty of a king. My daughter will marry a man with a good education and a fine family name, someone who can give her the life she was born to, not some freight hauler who can barely read. The insult cut deep, because it held a grain of some truth to that. William was not a schooled man, not like Elizabeth with her high-dollar academy education. You might have a point, but she will make that choice, not you. She is my own daughter. I get to say who is fit for her. She is growing into a woman. Soon enough, she will decide for herself. William started setting down Elizabeth's baggage, stacking it on the porch nice and steady. I'm not asking for your blessing, Mr. Whitmore, not asking for anything. I am just telling you straight. I will wait. When she comes of age, when she is ready to make her own way, I will introduce myself proper. I will let her choose. What she does from there is her business. You will not go near my daughter. I will not. William placed the last trunk and turned to face Edmund Square. Not until she is 18. Not until the law sees her as a grown woman. You have my word. The word of a man who has been wanting a child for 3 years. The word of a man who has kept his distance and his mouth shut for 3 years and who will keep on doing so until the time is right. William climbed back up on his wagon. I have never been dishonest with you, Mr. Whitmore. I am not starting now. Your daughter is safe from me until she is old enough to say for herself if she wants any part of me. I figure the answer will be no, but I will give her that choice. He clicked the reins before Edmund could say more, his heart hammering in his chest. He had not planned to show his whole hand like that, to lay it all out so plain, but maybe it was for the best. No more hiding in the shadows, no more pretending he was numb to it all. Edmund Whitmore knew the truth now, and Elizabeth knew a piece of it. When she turned 18, when she was finally grown, there would be no more secrets. If she wanted him gone, then so be it. At least the choice would have been hers. That night, Marcus showed up with a bottle of whiskey and a long face. Heard you and Edmund Whitmore had quite a talk today. Word gets around quick. It always does. Marcus poured them both a heavy hand. He is telling anybody who will listen that you are a danger, a wolf at the door for his daughter. Says he will run you plumb out of business if you do not clear out of town. William just looked into his glass. He can sure try. You are really going to hold out for her. She is 17. Still a child in the eyes of the law, William. I know her age down to the day. That is exactly why I am waiting. William took a drink, feeling the burn. I will not go near her until she turns 18, and then she gets to choose. If she tells me no, then that is where the story ends. And if Whitmore ruins my business before then, well, I will just have to rebuild somewhere new. But I am not leaving Telluride, and I am not backing down. Marcus just shook his head. You are either the most stand-up man I have ever known, or the biggest damn fool. Probably both. In the weeks that followed, Edmund Whitmore made good on his word, that he was a blight on decent folk. Some folks believed him. William saw a few contracts dry up, even some he had held for a good long while. But other people knew the kind of man William was and had seen him build his business with sweat and honesty. They kept hiring him, and some even made a point to offer him new work just to spite Whitmore. The freight business held on, though money was tighter than it had been in ages. Elizabeth went back to Denver in August, and William could finally breathe a little easier. One more year. If she finished at that academy next spring, she would be 18 come early April. Less than a year until she was grown, until he could finally speak to her right. He buried himself in his work with a new fire. He took the roughest routes, the ones that paid more because other men would not dare risk them. He saved every single penny, shoring up his funds for whatever was coming. In October, a letter came for him, addressed in a lady's careful hand. William just stared at it for a time before he opened it, his hands not quite steady. Dear Mr. Carter, I hope you will forgive me for writing without a proper introduction, but I must tell you what my father has been saying about you in Telluride. He has made you out to be something awful, a man with dishonorable intentions toward me. I cannot say if what he claims is true, but I believe you have a right to know what is being said. My father has a good heart. He is only trying to protect me. But I have grown weary of being shielded from the world like I am made of delicate glass that might break at the slightest touch of reality. You told me on our trip that you would only want to marry a woman you could not have. I have replayed that conversation in my mind many times. I find myself wondering if you were speaking of me. I wonder if I am the jail you have built for yourself. I do not know how I am meant to feel about such a thing. A part of me is flattered. Another part is unsettled. Mostly, I'm just confused. I finish at the academy in May. I will be 18 in April. After that, my father cannot legally rule my choices, though I have no doubt he will try. I suppose what I am trying to say in my own awkward way is that I want the chance to make my own decisions for my life, and that includes who I speak with and who I permit to call on me. I'm making no promises. I hardly know you, but I would like to if you are still willing to wait until the time is proper. This letter must be our secret. If my father knew I had sent it, he would be beyond angry. Please speak of it to no one. Yours in curiosity, Elizabeth Lizzie Whitmore. William read the letter 3 times through, then folded it with care and put it in his desk drawer with other important papers. His hand still had a tremor. She had written to him. She wanted to know him. She was willing to think on it. He wanted to write back that very instant. He wanted to let loose everything he had been holding inside for years. But it would not be proper, and it might land her in hot water with her father. So he just held tight to the hope her letter gave him and kept on waiting. Winter rolled in again, the fourth one since he had first laid eyes on Elizabeth Lizzie Whitmore getting off that stagecoach. William was 26 now, old enough to know better, but still young enough to have faith in the impossible. He worked and he saved, and he planned. And when Christmas came and Elizabeth was back in Telluride, he made sure to be seen around town without ever getting too close. But their eyes did meet once across the bustling Main Street during the holiday rush. She gave him a smile, a small secret thing that made his heart do a flip in his chest. Then her father's hand came down hard on her shoulder and steered her firmly away. William went home that night and wrote a letter he knew he could not mail. Dear Elizabeth, I have waited 4 years for you. I will wait as many more as I have to. When you are ready, when you are old enough to decide for yourself, I will be right here. I will give you the choice, and I will honor whatever you decide. I know I am not the man your father wants for you. I am not schooled or polished. I cannot give you a soft life in high society, but I can give you an honest heart and my complete devotion, and a love that has never wavered. Not even when I knew it was too early, too much, too impossible. You are worth the wait. You have always been worth the wait. Yours, William. He folded the letter and put it in the drawer right beside hers. Maybe one day he would give it to her, but not now. Not until she was 18. Not until she was her own woman to choose. The winter dragged on. Spring was slow to come to the mountains, with snow still clogging the high passes deep into May. William got word that Elizabeth had graduated from her academy with high marks and was due back in Telluride near the end of April. Her 18th birthday was April 3rd. William circled the date on his calendar and let himself feel a little flicker of hope. Not even 2 months away now. Less than 2 months until he could finally talk to her proper, present himself as a man looking to court her, and give her the choice he had promised himself he would. Edmund Whitmore came back to Telluride by himself in late March, saying Elizabeth had chosen to stay in Denver for a spell to visit with friends. William fought back the disappointment. She had every right to her own life, to choose where she went and what she did. He had no claim on her time, not a bit of it. But when April bled into May and Elizabeth still was not back, a knot of worry started to tighten in his gut. He heard whispers around town that Edmund was striking a deal with some businessman in Denver, arranging a marriage for his daughter. The talk was that Elizabeth was being courted by some banker named Harrison, a fella in his 30s with a heap of money, and his connections. One afternoon, Marcus found William in the freight office, staring at a ledger but not seeing the figures. "Did you hear the news about the banker?" "Yes. Are you going to do something about it?" William finally looked up. "What can I do?" "She is in Denver. I am here. If she wants to marry this man, that is her decision. Is it? Or is it what her father decided for her?" Marcus leaned on the doorframe. "You have waited 4 long years, son. You are not planning to quit now, right when she is old enough. I am not quitting, but I will not abduct her from Denver and drag her back against her wishes. That would prove I am exactly the man her father says I am. So, you will just let her marry some banker she does not care for. How can you be so sure she does not love him? Maybe she found love in Denver. Maybe she has forgotten all about the freight man from Telluride who looked at her a little too long." William snapped the ledger shut. "I promised her a choice. I cannot give her one if she's 300 miles away. You could ride to Denver. And do what? March into her father's home and declare my feelings? That will surely go over well." William stood up and paced the tiny office. "She sent me one letter last autumn. Just one. For all I know, her feelings have completely changed. She is 18 now, A grown woman by law. She could have contacted me if she wanted. Marcus watched him walk back and forth. Or maybe she is waiting for you to be the one to act. Maybe she is wondering why the man who said he would wait 4 years has not bothered to speak to her now that she is able. Those words struck him like a physical blow. William stopped his pacing. You really think she is waiting for me? I think you will live to regret it if you do not at least find out. You have been honorable, patient, and careful. You have done everything by the book. But at some point, you have to make a move, or all that waiting meant nothing. William glanced at the calendar on the wall. May 15th. Elizabeth had been 18 for 6 weeks. 6 weeks he had let slip by, being cautious when he should have. Been courageous. I have to go to Denver. Yes, you certainly do. The freight company can manage for a few days without you. I will handle things here. You go see if that young woman is waiting for you, or if she has found a new path. William took his hat from the hook. I am leaving right now. Right now? You have not even packed a bag. I can buy whatever I need in Denver. If I stay, I will talk myself out of it. William was already heading for the door. Thank you, Marcus, for all of it. Just bring her home, son. Bring her home, marry her, and put an end to this painful waiting game you two have played for 4 years. William was on the road out of Telluride within the hour, pushing his horse hard toward Denver. The trip would take days, maybe even a week, depending on the trail. Every single mile felt like it stretched on forever. He had waited for years, but now even one more day felt like too much to bear. He wondered what he would say, how he could explain the silent years, the careful space he kept, the endless waiting. Would she get it? Would she believe he had stayed away because of respect, not a lack of caring? The mountain passes were slick with spring melt. Streams had swelled into rushing waters, and mud made each step a gamble. William rested only when his horse had to, sleeping under the open sky and riding again at dawn. He had taken this route countless times, but it had never felt so pressing. Denver spread out on the plains ahead, looking like either a bright future or a coming storm. The city had boomed since Colorado became a state. The buildings were taller, the streets more crowded. William felt out of place in his travel-worn clothes, just another rough fellow from the mountains lost in the city's ambition. He found Edmund Whitmore's Denver address in the freighter's log and stood at the door of a grand brick house in a fine part of town. The maid who opened it took one look at his appearance and immediately tried to shut him out. I need to speak with Miss Elizabeth Lizzie Whitmore, William said, placing his boot to block the door. Please inform her that William Will Carter is here. Miss Whitmore is not seeing any visitors today. Please tell her anyway. Tell her I have waited as long as I could, and I must speak with her now. The maid's stern face softened just a little. Please wait here. She shut the door, leaving William on the porch feeling like a complete fool. This was a terrible idea. He should have sent a letter first. He should have known for sure that Elizabeth wanted to see him. He was just about to turn and leave when the door opened once more. Elizabeth stood right there, and for a moment William forgot how to take a breath. She was in a simple blue day dress, her dark hair neatly pinned. She looked just like every dream he had held on to, but she was real, standing right before him. Her eyes grew wide when she saw him. Mr. Carter, you actually came. I should have been here sooner. I waited too long, as I always seem to do. A small smile played on her lips. Come inside, quickly, before the whole neighborhood starts to talk. He followed her into a sitting room, filled with formal furniture and chairs that looked very stiff. Elizabeth closed the door and leaned on it, watching him with an expression he could not figure out. You look exhausted. I rode without stopping. I did not want to lose another minute. Why come now? I have been 18 for 6 weeks. I started to think you had changed your mind, that the idea of waiting for me was better than actually having me. Her words had a sharp, cutting edge. I thought you might need some time to settle, to make your choices without any pressure from me. I did not want to rush you. What if I wanted to be rushed? Elizabeth walked away from the door, her hands clutched together in front of her. My whole life, people have told me what to do, where I should go, how I must act. Everyone treats me like I am made of delicate glass. You were the only one who ever suggested I could make my own way, and then you were gone. You never wrote. You never came to visit. You just disappeared completely. I was trying to do what was right. The right thing would have been to trust that I know my own heart. William felt a wall inside of him begin to crumble. You are correct. I was a coward. I have been in love with you since you were 14 years old, and that has scared me to death because I knew it was not right. I knew I had to wait, and I did. I waited for 4 years, but when you finally turned 18, I told myself to wait even longer, to give you more space, to not push you. I was telling myself it was for honor, but the truth is I was just scared. Elizabeth just stared at him, her face showing pure shock. You love me? Yes, I have loved you for 4 whole years. That is the reason I waited. That is why I kept my distance, even when it was painful. I wanted you to have a chance to grow, to be your own person, and to make your own decisions. I did not want you to pick me out of obligation or because you knew no other way. I wanted you to pick me because you wanted to, if you picked me at all. Did it ever cross your mind that maybe I was waiting on you? Her voice grew stronger. Did you ever think that maybe I was wondering why the man who said he cared so much never bothered to talk to me once I was finally of age? Marcus suggested that. I did not believe him. You should have. Elizabeth folded her arms across her chest. For 6 weeks, my father has presented me with one suitor after another. Bankers, lawyers, and sons of merchants, all of them perfectly fine and terribly dull. Do you have any idea what I said to every last one of them? What? I told them I was waiting for someone else, that a man in Telluride had promised to give me a choice. And until he made good on that promise, I could not decide anything about my life. William felt his whole world shift on its axis. You were waiting for me. Yes, you fool. I have been waiting for you this entire time. She stepped toward him, and he saw the shine of tears in her eyes. Did you honestly think I sent that letter last fall for no good reason? I was trying to tell you I was still here. I was telling you I wanted to know you, but then you did nothing. You said nothing. You just kept waiting, and I began to believe I might have been wrong about all of it. You were not wrong. William crossed the space between them, but he stopped just before he touched her, still unsure if he had earned the right. I have waited 4 years to say this to you. I love you. I have loved you from the moment I saw you get off that stagecoach, all clumsy legs and untamed hair. And something deep in my soul knew you were mine, even though you were much too young. I tried to put you out of my mind. I tried to find someone else, but it was no use. You were always there, in my thoughts and in my heart. Waiting for you to grow up was the hardest thing I have ever had to do. I am grown up now. Yes, you are. So, what are you going to do about it now? William reached out very slowly, giving her a chance to pull back if she wished. When she stayed still, he gently held her face in his hands. Her skin was soft and warmer than he had ever dreamed. I am going to ask you to return to Telluride with me. I am going to court you the right way, the way you should be courted. And if you will have me, if you choose, even with all my faults, and after your daddy lists 100 reasons why I am not right for you, I am still going to marry you. Yes. He blinked once. Yes. A yes to every last word. Yes, I will go back to Telluride with you. Yes, you can come calling on me. And yes, I will marry you. Elizabeth's smile was as bright as a Texas sunrise. Did you honestly reckon I would say anything else? My father will just have to learn to live with my decisions. I am 18 years old. I am a grown woman now. I love him, but I will not let him run my life any longer. You said you love him. William's heart hammered in his chest. Do you figure you could ever love me? I already do. She said it plain and simple, like it was the most obvious thing in the world. I think I started loving you on that carriage ride last summer when you were straight with me and treated me like I had some sense. I have been falling more in love with the thought of you ever since. And now that you are finally here, real and standing in front of me instead of some faraway dream, I am absolutely sure. William kissed her right then, a soft touch of his lips that felt like coming home after a lifetime of wandering. She made a little sound of surprise and then kissed him right back, her arms wrapping around his neck. The kiss was sweet and careful and just about perfect, and when they finally pulled apart, William rested his forehead against hers. "We ought to talk about the practical side of things," he said. "Your daddy is going to have the law on me for snatching you." "You are not snatching me. I am choosing to go with you." Elizabeth pulled back just enough to look him square in the eye. "But you are right that my father will not take this kindly. He is planning on announcing my engagement to Harrison Merrick next week." "That banker fella?" "Yes. I have told him time and again I am not interested. But it is like he does not hear me. He figures I am just being a silly girl and will come to my senses. What do you want to do?" The question seemed to catch her off guard. "You are asking me. This is your life, Elizabeth. Your choice. And I will back you up no matter what you decide." She bit her lip, thinking hard. "I do not want to sneak off like I am ashamed of choosing you. But I also do not want a big blow-up that will ruin things with my father for good. What if you write him a letter, explain your choice, tell him you love him, but that you are making your own way now? Leave it where he will find it after we are long gone. That feels like running scared. It is the smart play. He is all fired up right now, convinced I am some kind of danger to you. Trying to talk sense to him is a waste of breath, but if we go and give him time to cool off and get used to the idea, maybe he will come around in the end, and if he does not," William took her hands in his, "then I will spend every day of my life making sure you never second-guess choosing me over his blessing." Elizabeth squeezed his hands. "All right, I will write the letter, but we need to be gone today before he gets home from his office. He will surely try to stop me if we do not. They got to move on after that." Elizabeth packed a trunk with her necessities, while William rustled up a bigger carriage and fresh horses. She wrote a long letter to her father, laying out her feelings and her decision, and saying she was sorry for leaving like this. But she stood firm in her choice. She left it right on his desk, where he would be sure to find it that evening. They were on the road heading out of Denver before the sun went down. Elizabeth sat beside William on the carriage seat, much like she had last summer. But everything in the world was different now. Then she had been 17 and out of reach. Now she was 18 and choosing him of her own free will, and that difference made all the years of waiting feel worth it. "Tell me about your life," Elizabeth said as the city lights grew small behind them. "You know so much about me from watching me grow up, but I know next to nothing about you." So William told her his story. He talked about his boyhood, his folks, and the sister in Kansas he had not seen in ages. He told her about taking on the freight company after his father passed, about the hard times keeping it afloat, and the pride in building something with his own two hands. He admitted how tough it had been seeing her around town and not being able to go to her, to wait and wait, all the while wondering if he was making the biggest mistake of his life. "You are not," Elizabeth said, her voice sure. "If you had come to me when I was younger, I would not have understood the choice I was making. I would have been carried away with the romance of it all, not thinking about what was real. But you gave me the time I needed to grow up, to find out who I am and what I truly want. Now I am choosing you, knowing full well what it all means. What does it mean? It means a life in Telluride instead of Denver. It means being married to a freight hauler instead of a banker. It means working hard and building something side by side instead of having everything handed to me on a platter." She looked at him with a steady gaze. "It means choosing real love and honesty over money and a fancy name. And I would make that same choice again every single day." They stopped for the night at a little roadhouse, and William was firm about getting separate rooms. No matter what, Elizabeth said, we are not married yet. I will not tarnish your good name any more than I already have. My good name is already tarnished. I ran off with you. You chose to make this trip with me. That is different. He kissed her softly on the forehead. I have waited for years. I can surely wait a few more weeks until we can be married proper. The trip back to Telluride took 6 whole days. They took their time on the road, stopping often so Elizabeth could rest and so they could talk. William felt like he was getting to know her piece by piece, finding something new with every talk they had. She was smart and curious, with a mind of her own on everything from politics to poems. She dreamed of starting a school for girls in Telluride, convinced that a good education was the key to giving women real choices in their lives. You are going to do great things, William told her one evening as they watched the sun dip behind the mountains. You are already something special. I want to make a difference. I do not want to just be some fella's wife, only important for what I can do for him. I want to be my own woman. You will be. I would never try to change a thing about you or make you feel small. She rested her head on his shoulder. On his shoulder. And that is exactly why I love you. They rolled into Telluride on a bright afternoon in late May. The town looked just as he remembered, bustling with miners and merchants, a real beehive of a silver boom. But something felt different for William this time. He was coming home with the woman he loved by his side, and that just changed the whole picture. Marcus was there at the freight office, a knowing grin spread across his sun-toughened face. So you finally caught her. She caught me, more like. Is that a fact? William helped Elizabeth down from the carriage. Marcus, I'd like you to meet Elizabeth Lizzie Whitmore. Elizabeth, this here is Marcus, my best friend and my conscience for more years than I care to admit. Miss Whitmore. Marcus tipped the brim of his hat. Welcome home. Thank you, Elizabeth said with a warm smile. And please call me Elizabeth. Looks like we will be seeing a lot of each other if I am staying put in Telluride. You are planning on staying then? I am. William and I are getting hitched. Marcus let out a holler that made folks stop and stare all the way down the street. It is about dang time. I thought you two were going to dance around the issue forever. The news shot through Telluride quicker than a flash flood. By sundown, every soul knew William Will Carter had brought Edmund Whitmore's girl back with him, and they were fixin' to get married. Folks had mixed feelings about it. Some were all worked up, certain that William had led a young woman astray. Others were just tickled pink, having watched their careful courtship for the past 4 years, and hoping love would win out. Edmund Whitmore rode into Telluride 3 days later, pushing his horses so hard he must have worn out a few. He busted into the freight office where William was deep in his ledgers. Where is my daughter? William got to his feet nice and slow. She is at Mrs. Henderson's boarding house, in her own room before you get any ideas. I am not about to tarnish her good name. You did that the second you talked her into running off with you. I never talked her into a thing. She made her own decision. Edmund's hands balled up into tight fists. She is 18 years old. The girl does not know her own mind. She is 18, which makes her a grown woman by law, and she knows her own mind a sight better than you think. William kept his voice even and low. Mr. Whitmore, I know you do not think much of me. I am sure I am not the man you pictured for your daughter. But she chose me, and I aim to spend my whole life making sure she never regrets it. You haul freight. You have got no fancy book learning, no manners to speak of, and no future beyond driving a wagon through these mountains. You are not wrong. I am all of those things, but I love your daughter, and I will never try to take her choices from her. Can you honestly say the same? Edmund's face turned beet red. How dare you? Father, that is enough. They both spun around. Elizabeth was standing right in the doorway, a fire in her eyes. I wrote you a letter and asked you not to do this. I asked you to honor my choice. Elizabeth. Edmund's voice cracked. You are just throwing your life away on some silly crush for a man you hardly know. I am choosing a life of my own, not the one you had all mapped out for me. There is a big difference. She strode into the office and stood right next to William, close enough to show everyone whose side she was on. I love you, Father. But I'm not going to live my life just to meet your expectations. I have my own hopes and my own plans. William stands behind those plans. Do you? All I want is what is best for you. Then trust that I know what that is. Elizabeth's voice went soft. I am not a little girl anymore. I have not been for a good long while. You just kept on treating me like one because it was easier than admitting I was growing up and growing away. But I am a woman now, and I am making my own decisions. I choose William. I choose Telluride. And I choose a life that might be tougher, but it will be all mine. Edmund looked from his daughter to William, and you could see the fight just drain right out of him. I just cannot lose you. You are not losing me. I'm just starting my own life. Elizabeth reached over and took her father's hand. Please, Father, just be happy for me. That is all I have ever wanted. He stood there quiet for what felt like an eternity. Then he let out a long sigh, a sound that seemed to come up from his boots. I do not approve. I think you are making a terrible mistake, but you are right. You are old enough to make your own mistakes. He turned to William, his voice hard as iron. If you ever hurt her, if you cannot provide for her, if you give me one single reason to think she was wrong about you, I will make your life a living hell. Understood, sir. Make sure you do. Edmund looked back at Elizabeth. Are you absolutely certain this is what you want? I have never been more sure of anything in my life. Well, I suppose I am staying in Telluride for a wedding, then. He did not sound thrilled about it, but he did not sound like he was going to fight it either. It was a start. They were married 3 weeks later in the little church on the edge of town. Elizabeth wore a simple cotton dress she had made herself, white with a bit of lace at the collar and sleeves. William had on his best suit, all cleaned and pressed for the big day. Edmund gave his daughter away, looking like he would rather be anywhere else, but he did walk her down the aisle. And that meant a lot. Marcus stood up as the best man. Mrs. Henderson stood with Elizabeth. Seemed like half the town squeezed into that church to see the marriage between the freight hauler, who had waited 4 long years, and the girl he had loved from a distance for too long. When the preacher asked if anyone had a reason they should not be wed, Edmund shifted in his pew, and the whole church held its breath. But he kept quiet, and the ceremony went on. I, William Will Carter, take you, Elizabeth Lizzie Whitmore, to be my lawfully wedded wife, William said, his voice as steady as an oak, though you could tell he was choked up with emotion. I promise to love you, to honor you, and to back your choices for as long as we both shall live. I promise I will be a man worthy of the choice you made. I, Elizabeth Lizzie Whitmore, take you, William Will Carter, to be my lawfully wedded husband, Elizabeth said, her eyes shining with tears. I promise to love you, to challenge you, and to build a life with you that neither of us could have ever built on our own. I promise that saying yes to you was the easiest choice I will ever have to make. When the preacher told them they were man and wife, and William could kiss his bride, William gently took Elizabeth's face in his hands and kissed her with all the love he had kept bottled up for 4 years. She kissed him right back with just as much heart, and the whole church broke out in cheers. They had the reception at the town hall, and it was a real shindig with dancing and drinks, and toasts that were sometimes sweet and sometimes a little bit cheeky. Edmund only stayed for about an hour before he tipped his hat and headed back to his house on the hill. But just before he left, he pulled William to the side. I still do not like this, he said, plain as day. But my little girl is happy, and that has to count for something. Do not you ever make me regret this day. I will not, sir. I give you my word. Edmund just nodded once and walked away. William watched him go, then felt Elizabeth's hand slip into his. He will come around, she said softly. Daddy is a stubborn man, but he loves me. He will learn to love you, too. I sure hope you are right. I am always right, she grinned up at him. You will figure that out soon enough. They spent their first night as man and wife in William's house, the one he had bought years ago, always hoping that one day it might be a real home for the two of them. Elizabeth wandered through every room, absolutely delighted, already making plans for where the furniture would go and what curtains to hang, all the little things that turn a house into a home. "This is all ours," she said, standing in the middle of what would be their bedroom. "Our home, our life. Everything we make from here on out, we make it together." William pulled her into his arms, and they just stood there holding on to each other. 4 years of waiting and hoping, of wondering if a day like this would ever come, had led them right here. Elizabeth was in his arms, wearing his ring, and promising him forever. "I love you," he whispered into her hair. "I have loved you for so long. I cannot even remember what it felt like before. I love you too, and I am so thankful you waited for me to be ready. I would have waited a lifetime. Good thing you did not have to." Their new life began to take shape in that little house near the edge of Telluride. Elizabeth put all her energy into starting a school just for girls, talking the wealthy mine owners and merchants in town into putting up the money. She had a way with words and a will of iron, and in just 6 months she had a building and had hired 2 other teachers to help. The school opened its doors in January of 1886, and Elizabeth taught there 3 days a week, making sure the girls got just as good an education as the boys. William kept running his freight company, and with Elizabeth cheering him on, he even got into transporting passengers. They worked shoulder to shoulder, planning their future and supporting each other's dreams. In the evenings, they would sit out on their porch, watching the sun paint the mountains purple, and William would think about how close he had come to missing out on all of this. Edmund came back to Telluride a few times during their first year of marriage, saying it was for business, but it was plain to see he was checking up on his daughter. With every visit, he seemed a little less hard on William, a little more ready to admit that maybe, just maybe, Elizabeth had chosen right after all. After their first year married, Edmund was finally discussing business with William, offering counsel that was more useful than mighty. Elizabeth remarked after a visit, "He is starting to take a liking to you. He truly smiled when you spoke of widening the freight routes. He is a good man. He simply desired more for you than a teamster's life. He wanted me to have security and certainty. You are not either of those things." She kissed him. "That is precisely why I selected you." In the fall of 1886, Elizabeth learned she was with child. That news sent William into a fret that made her chuckle. "You are carrying on like no one has ever welcomed a baby," she said, observing him pace their room. "What if things go wrong? What if I am a poor father? What if you cease this worrying and just be happy with me?" She pulled him to sit on the bed. "We are going to have a child. That is a wonderful thing. You are correct. I am sorry. I am just plain terrified, I know. I am as well, but we will find our way through it together, the very way we handle all other matters." Their boy came into the world in April of 1887, just a week past Elizabeth's 21st birthday. They called him James, for William's own father, and he favored Elizabeth in his dark hair and William in his blue eyes. Edmund made the trip from Denver the day after and held his grandson, tears cutting paths down his sun-creased cheeks. "He is without flaw," Edmund said softly. "Utterly without flaw. Thank you, Father." Elizabeth was worn out but glowing, sitting up in bed among the pillows. "Are you ready to properly greet your son-in-law? Perhaps confess he is not the terrible choice you imagined." Edmund glanced over at William, who lingered near the window, giving the two of them room. "Carter, come over here." William walked over carefully. Edmund looked him over for a good long while, the baby still in his arms. "You have brought my girl happiness. You two have made a fine life. My judgment of you was mistaken." "Sir, I was mistaken," Edmund stated again, his voice firm. "I formed an opinion of you unfairly. I expected the worst of you because I could not picture a man worthy of my daughter. You have shown your true character. You are a fine man and a fine husband, and I am certain you will be a fine father. I am sorry for the words I spoke against you." William felt a weight lift from his shoulders. "Thank you, sir. Your words mean a great deal. Call me Edmund. We are kin now." They brought up little James in that house just outside Telluride. Then, 2 years on, Elizabeth delivered twin girls, Anna and Elizabeth. The daughters inherited their mother's sharp mind and hard head, qualities that pleased and worried William all at once. The hauling business kept getting bigger. William brought on more teamsters, bought more wagons, and stretched his roots through most of the Colorado high country. Elizabeth's school grew into a pillar of Telluride, teaching many girls who had few other prospects. They put in long days, loved with all their hearts, and forged a life that was overflowing and messy, but it belonged to them. Edmund relocated to Telluride for good in 1890, saying he aimed to be near his grandkids, but the whole town knew the real reason was he had finally made peace with his daughter's joy and wanted a piece of it for himself. He became a regular sight at the supper table, schooling the children on stones and oars and how assays worked, which made Elizabeth sigh while William just grinned at the happy home he never thought he would have. For their 5th anniversary, William brought Elizabeth to the very place he first laid eyes on her getting off the stagecoach so long ago. The town was bigger now, with new walls going up and old ones coming down, but that one spot in Telluride looked mostly untouched. "Do you recall when I first saw you?" he asked, taking her hand. "No, I was only 14 and was too worried about this new town to notice anything else. I saw you, and a part of me recognized you. It was the craziest notion. You were just a girl. I was a man. There was no way on earth it made sense, but I knew it for a fact." Elizabeth rested her head against his shoulder. "I am so glad that you knew, and I am glad you were patient. Are you content? Deeply content? You do not wish for the life you left behind in Denver?" She drew back to meet his gaze directly. "William Will Carter, choosing you is the one decision I have never once questioned. Not for a single breath. This wild, trying, wonderful life we have made is more than I ever dreamed of. You let me decide, and I decided correctly. I love you. I love you also. I always have, and I always will." They held one another for a quiet minute as the light softened and Telluride bustled on. William considered all the years he had waited, always questioning his path, afraid she would pick another. Every bit of it was paid back in this moment, with this life and this love. They started for home as the sun dipped behind the peaks, brushing the clouds with fire and rose. Their children would be there along with Edmund, who was likely explaining some lesson far too advanced for their young minds. Their home would be filled with warmth and chatter and affection, and all the wonderful mess of having a family. William had given Elizabeth 4 years to make up her own mind, and she had made him her choice. The life they had forged was beyond anything he had dared to hope for. All the cautions he had heard about her youth had been mistaken. She was never too young. She only required the seasons to grow into the woman who could make her own choice with a sure heart. And her choice was love. Her choice was him. That alone made the long wait a small price to pay. When they got to their front door and heard the children hollering a welcome, Elizabeth pressed his hand. "Thank you for your patience with me. Thank you for being a man worth waiting for." They stepped across the threshold into their house, their world. Their own storybook ending began with patience and grew into a love that would see them through all their days. The teamster had waited for her to be ready, and she had picked him. Absolutely nothing could be more right. This content was carefully researched, developed, and manually edited by our team to deliver meaningful stories with valuable life lessons. Every narrative is crafted to entertain, inspire, and empower our audience. We believe that great stories can change lives, and we are committed to bringing you content that matters. Thank you for being part of our community.